Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. 3 months into what was supposed to be a routine patrol near the outer rim, and Nico was elbow-deep in a malfunctioning coffee maker when his life decided to get weird. Not that anyone told him it was getting weird, mind you. That would have been too convenient, too straightforward, too much like actual communication. No, the universe, in its infinite wisdom and apparently infinite sense of humor, decided that Nico's descent into chaos should begin with a child's toy, and a misunderstanding that would ripple through the galactic coalition like a particularly aggressive computer virus. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The Resolute Dawn was a medical frigate, which was a fancy way of saying it was a flying hospital that occasionally remembered it had weapons. Nico wasn't medical staff, thank the stars, because the sight of blood made him queasy, and the smell of antiseptic made him sneeze. He was a maintenance technician, which meant when something broke, and on a ship this old, things broke constantly, people called him to fix it. He was good at fixing things, really good. Give him a busted ventilation system, a dying power relay, or a food synthesizer that kept producing what could only generously be called protein paste, and he'd have it working in under an hour. He understood systems, logic, cause, and effect. If A was broken, you checked B and C, replaced D if necessary, and viola. Problem solved. Simple, straightforward, comforting, even. The coffee maker gurgled ominously, and Nico swore under his breath. "Oh, don't you dare die on me. Commander Antonia will have my head if I don't get this working before her shift." "Excuse me?" The voice was small, uncertain, and came from somewhere around knee-height. Nico extracted himself from beneath the kitchen counter, bumping his head on the way out, because the universe apparently wasn't done with him yet. He turned to find a Ralmoth cub staring up at him with eyes the size of dinner plates. Now, Ralmoth were what happened when evolution looked at apex predators and said, "You know what? Let's make them bigger, add some bioluminescent stripes, and give them retractable claws that could shred Duraplast." They were the kind of species that made humans look soft and squishy by comparison. Which, to be fair, humans absolutely were. But this wasn't a fully grown Ralmoth warrior. This was Pip, one of the cubs whose parents served on the ship, and he was about as threatening as a particularly fluffy kitten. A kitten with claws, sure, but still. "Hey, Pip," Nico said, rubbing his head. "What's up, little guy?" Pip's ears drooped, his tail tucked between his legs, and he held out something small and metallic. "It's broken." Nico took the object carefully. It was a spinning top, intricately carved with patterns that probably meant something significant in Ralmoth culture. The kind of toy a parent gives their kid with a speech about heritage and tradition. The kind of toy that, when broken, results in tears and devastation. The mechanism was jammed, the spinner bent at an angle that prevented rotation. "Ah," Nico said, turning it over in his hands. "Yeah, I can see the problem. When did this happen?" "This morning," Pip said miserably. "I dropped it during combat practice. Father says it cannot be repaired. He says what is broken must remain broken, that it teaches us to be more careful." Nico blinked. "That's depressing. It is the Ralmoth way." "Well," Nico said, reaching for his toolkit, "it's not the human way. Give me 5 minutes." Pip's eyes widened. "You can fix it?" "Kid, I can fix anything." It was such a simple statement, delivered with such casual confidence. How was Nico supposed to know those 4 words would come back to haunt him? He worked quickly, straightening the bent spinner with careful pressure, clearing the jammed mechanism, adding a tiny drop of lubricant to the rotation point. When he was done, he gave it a test spin. It whirled perfectly, the patterns blurring into a mesmerizing dance of color. "There you go," Nico said, handing it back. "Good as new. Better, actually. I reinforced the connection point so it won't bend as easily next time." Pip took the toy with reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. He spun it once, twice, watching it rotate with an expression of pure wonder. Then he looked up at Nico, like he'd just witnessed a miracle. You fixed it," Pip whispered. "Father said it could not be done. Mother said, what breaks stays broken. But you fixed it." "Yeah, well," Nico said, feeling suddenly awkward under that intense stare. "That's kind of my job. I fix things." "You fix broken things," Pip repeated slowly, as if committing the phrase to memory. "Sure do. Now run along before Commander Antonia catches you in the kitchen. She's already cranky enough without her coffee." Pip clutched the toy to his chest and bolted, his tail swishing with excitement. Nico went back to the coffee maker, unaware that he'd just lit a fuse. By lunch, every Ralmoth cub on the ship knew that the human could fix broken things. By dinner, their parents knew. By the next morning, the story had spread to the Narquil pilots, the Moltari engineers, and the Orinth medical staff. But here's the thing about information traveling through multiple species with multiple languages and multiple translation matrices. It's like that game where you whisper a phrase down a line of people, and by the end, "I like pizza" has become "the nights are freezing." In the Ralmoth language, the word for things and the word for beings shared a common root. Context usually made the distinction clear. Usually. The Coalition's standard translators, in their algorithmic wisdom, made a choice. A reasonable choice, given the context of a medical frigate. A choice that would have made perfect sense to any logical AI. The human fixes broken things became the human fixes broken beings. And then, as it spread to other species with other languages, it mutated further. Fixes broken beings became heals the wounded. Heals the wounded became the healer who succeeds where others fail. And finally, inevitably, it became the human has magic that repairs what cannot be repaired. Nico, blissfully unaware of his growing reputation, spent the next week fixing a malfunctioning air recycler, 3 busted door panels, 2 personal data terminals, and, in what he considered his crowning achievement, the captain's chair on the bridge that had been squeaking for 6 months. Commander Antonia actually smiled at him. It was terrifying. "Good work, Nico," she said, settling into the now silent chair with visible relief. "I don't know what we'd do without you." "Probably sit in a squeaky chair," Nico replied, because his sense of self-preservation had never been particularly strong. Antonia's smile didn't fade, which was even more terrifying. "Probably. Listen, I need you to check the environmental controls in Section 9. The Ralmoth families are complaining about the temperature." "On it, Commander." Section 9 was where most of the Ralmoth lived when they weren't on duty. It was kept warmer than the rest of the ship because their homeworld was a toasty paradise that made human tropical zones look like Arctic tundra. When Nico arrived, he found a crowd. Not just Ralmoth, either. There were Narquil, their iridescent wings catching the light. Moltari, their tentacles coiled with what might have been anticipation. Even a few Orinth, their feathered crests raised in interest. They were all staring at him. Nico said eloquently. "Hi?" Pip pushed through the crowd, his tail wagging with enthusiasm. "You came! Everyone, this is Nico, the one I told you about." "The one who fixes broken things," another cub said, eyes wide. "The healer," a Narquil whispered. "The human with the gift," a Moltari added. Nico's brain stuttered. What now?" Before anyone could answer, the crowd parted, and a Narquil adult stepped forward. Her name was Kilmara, and she was one of the frigate's fighter pilots. Nico had fixed her flight harness 2 weeks ago when the adjustment mechanism had frozen. She was also limping, her left wing bent at an angle that made Nico wince in sympathy. "Nico," she said, her voice carrying the clicking undertone of her species. "I need your help." "Okay," Nico said slowly. "What's broken? Your flight harness acting up again?" Kilmara looked confused. "My harness? No, it works perfectly. It is my wing. Can you fix it?" Nico stared at her, then at the crowd, then back at her. "Your wing?" "Yes. I injured it during a training exercise yesterday. Dr. Imogen said it would heal in time, but I need to fly patrol in 3 days. I was told you could help." "I think," Nico said carefully, "there's been a misunderstanding." The misunderstanding, as it turned out, was not going to be cleared up easily, or quickly, or as Nico was rapidly discovering at all. "Look," he said, holding up his hands in what he hoped was a calming gesture, "I'm a maintenance tech. I fix machines, not people. You need to see Dr. Imogen in the med bay." Kilmara's antennae drooped. "But Pip said you fix broken things." "Broken machines," Nico emphasized. "Machines, not biological beings." "But you fixed my harness," Kilmara said, her wing twitching. "And after you adjusted it, my flying improved. My balance was better. The pain in my back decreased." Nico frowned. "Well, yeah, because the harness was putting pressure on your thorax at the wrong angle. I just redistributed the weight along your—" He stopped, something clicking in his brain. "Wait, you had back pain?" "From an old injury. But when you fixed the harness, the pain went away." "That's because the harness was making it worse," Nico said. "Bad ergonomics. I just adjusted it so it wasn't—" He paused again, looking at her injured wing, then at her harness, then back at her wing. His engineer's brain was already calculating angles, stress points, weight distribution. No, absolutely not. He was not going there. "I cannot help you with your wing," he said firmly. "That's a medical issue. Go see Dr. Imogen." Kilmara's wings drooped further, but she nodded and turned away. The crowd murmured, disappointment rippling through them. Pip looked up at Nico with an expression that could only be described as betrayed. "But you said you could fix anything." "Anything mechanical," Nico said, feeling like he was disappointing a small child. Which, to be fair, he was. "I'm sorry, Pip, I'm not a doctor." He fled before anyone could argue further, heading straight for his workshop in the maintenance bay. It was his sanctuary, his safe space, the one place on the ship where things made sense, where problems had solutions, and solutions required tools, not medical degrees. He'd been there maybe 20 minutes, trying to focus on a repair requisition for the port-side sensor array, when his workshop door opened. A Moltari shuffled in, 3 of its 6 tentacles wrapped around its midsection. "Please," Plonneth said, its voice carrying the burbling quality of its species. "They said you might help." "Let me guess," Nico said wearily. "Something's broken, and you want me to fix it." "Yes." Plonneth unwrapped one tentacle, revealing swelling and discoloration. "I strained it during cargo loading. It hurts to move." "That's a sprain," Nico said. "You need medical." "Dr. Imogen said to rest it for 5 days. I cannot rest for 5 days. I am the only Moltari certified to handle the chemical storage containers. If I do not work, the shipment sits in the cargo bay, taking up space we need for incoming supplies." Nico pinched the bridge of his nose. "I'm not a doctor." "I know. But you understand systems. You understand pressure and stress and load-bearing. Is a tentacle not simply a biological manipulator arm? Could you not treat it as you would treat a malfunctioning mechanical limb? That was actually not a terrible analogy. No, no, he was not considering this. Please, Plonneth said quietly. I ask only for what you would do for a machine. Nico looked at the injured tentacle, looked at his tool bench, looked at the support brackets he used for reinforcing damaged conduits. I hate this, he muttered. I hate everything about this. If this goes wrong, I'm blaming you. 10 minutes later, Plonneth left with its tentacle wrapped in a carefully constructed splint made from lightweight support brackets, padded with thermal insulation foam and secured with adjustable pressure bands that could be tightened or loosened as needed. Keep it immobilized for 2 days, Nico said, then start gentle movements. Think of it like recalibrating a mechanical arm after repairs. Slow, careful, gradual increase in load tolerance. Plonneth flexed its other tentacles experimentally. This is brilliant. The support prevents further strain while maintaining circulation, and the padding distributes pressure evenly. Yeah, well, it's basic stress engineering. Don't read too much into it. You are too modest. Thank you, Nico. After Plonneth left, Nico sat in his workshop, staring at the ceiling. This is fine, he told himself. One splint doesn't make me a doctor. This is fine. By the next morning, it was decidedly not fine. An Orinth named Arnix appeared with a cracked beak plate, the result of an unfortunate accident in the hangar bay. Then a Ralmoth engineer with a twisted ankle. Then another narquil with a dislocated shoulder joint. Nico treated each one the same way he'd treat a damaged machine. Assess the problem, identify the mechanical issue, apply a solution based on physics and material science. He used polymer resin designed for hole repairs to stabilize Arnix's beak plate. He created a compression wrap for the twisted ankle using the same principles he'd used to stabilize a damaged support strut. He even, and he still couldn't believe this worked, talked the narquil through relocating its own shoulder by explaining it as a joint mechanism that had slipped out of alignment. Think of your shoulder as a ball and socket connector, he'd said. We just need to guide the ball back into the socket. It's going to hurt like hell, but it's simple mechanics. It worked. They all worked. And word spread faster than a hull breach. Commander Antonia cornered him in the corridor outside the mess hall. Nico, she said, her voice carrying that tone that meant he was either getting a commendation or a court-martial. Why am I receiving reports that you're practicing medicine without a license? I'm not practicing medicine, Nico protested. I'm applying engineering principles to biological systems. That's literally what medical doctors do. No, medical doctors heal people. I'm just troubleshooting malfunctions. Antonia stared at him for a long moment, then rubbed her temples. I need more coffee for this conversation. The coffee maker's working great, by the way. That's the only reason you're not in the brig right now. Dr. Imogen found the whole situation hilarious, which Nico felt was deeply unfair considering she was supposed to be on his side. Let me get this straight, she said, leaning against the medbay counter with a grin that was entirely too amused. Aliens are bypassing my fully equipped medical facility to see you in your workshop because they think you're better at healing than I am. That's not what's happening, Nico said. That's exactly what's happening. They just think I have a different approach. Because you do. Imogen's grin faded into something more thoughtful. You know what's funny? Your success rate is actually pretty impressive. That splint you made for Plonneth? Brilliant design. Better than what I would have used because You understood the specific stress patterns in Moltari tentacles better than I did. You approached it as an engineering problem. Because it is an engineering problem, Nico said. A biological system is still a system. It has components, functions, failure points. If you treat it logically, then you can fix it, Imogen finished. Yeah, I'm starting to see that. Before Nico could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Medical emergency, Training Bay 3, the ship's AI announced. Combat injury, severe bleeding, immediate assistance required. Imogen was moving before the announcement finished, grabbing her medical kit. Nico followed because that's what you did when alarms went off on a ship. Training Bay 3 was chaos. A group of Ralmoth warriors stood in a circle, their bioluminescent stripes flashing with agitation. In the center, lying on the floor, was Ralnix, one of the senior warriors and Pip's father. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and viscous. His breathing was labored, one hand pressed against a deep gash across his torso. "Combat drill gone wrong," another warrior said, as Imogen dropped beside Ralnix. "The safety protocols failed. The blade was live." Imogen worked quickly, scanning Ralnix with her medical tricorder, her hands already reaching for clotting agents and wound sealant. Punctured lung, possibly nicked an artery. I need to stabilize him before transport to the medbay. She was good. Fast, efficient, professional. But Ralnix's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "No," he rasped. "Not you." Imogen blinked. "Excuse me. Where is Nico?" Ralnix's eyes found him across the room. "The human who fixes broken things. I want him." "I'm a doctor," Imogen said, her voice tight. "He's a maintenance technician. He fixed my son's most treasured possession, something we believed could not be repaired. If he can do that." Ralnix coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Then he can fix me." Nico felt like he was going to be sick. "I can't. This is way beyond—" "Please." Ralnix's voice was weakening. "I trust you." Imogen looked at Nico, her expression unreadable. Then she stood, grabbed him by the arm, and pulled him down beside Ralnix. "Listen very carefully," she said quietly. "I'm going to walk you through this. You're going to do exactly what I say. And if you argue with me, I swear I'll tell Commander Antonia about the time you reprogrammed the food synthesizers to only make chocolate pudding. That was an accident. Nico, focus." He focused. "Okay," Imogen said. "You see this wound? What does it look like to you?" Nico's brain stuttered, then shifted into a different mode, the same mode he used when assessing damaged systems. "It's a containment breach," he said slowly. "Fluid pressure is escaping from a compromised line." "Good. What do you do with a compromised line?" "Seal the breach, stop the leak, reroute if necessary." "Exactly. Now do it." Imogen handed him tools, calling out instructions, but Nico barely heard her. His hands moved with the same confidence they did when repairing a fuel line or sealing a hull breach. Apply pressure here to stop the flow. Seal this section with the compound, just like patching a crack. The internal damage was like a punctured pipe. You couldn't see it directly, but you could infer from the pressure drop and fluid accumulation. 20 minutes later, Ralnix's breathing had steadied. The bleeding had stopped. He was stable. "Transport him to medbay," Imogen ordered the waiting med team. "I'll finish the repairs there." As they carried Ralnix away, the warrior's eyes remained locked on Nico. "Thank you," he whispered. "I knew you could fix me." After everyone else had left, Nico stood in the empty training bay, staring at his blood-covered hands. "I need a drink," he said. "Get in line," Imogen replied. The Resolute Dawn docked at Coalition Station Anchor 9 3 days later, and Nico's life officially spiraled beyond his control. He should have seen it coming. Really, he should have. The signs were all there. The way crew members looked at him in the corridors, the respectful nods from species that normally ignored humans, the fact that Pip had started following him around like a particularly devoted shadow. But Nico had been busy trying to convince himself that the incident with Ralnix was a one-time thing, an emergency situation that would never happen again. Definitely not something that would define the rest of his career. He was wrong. So spectacularly, catastrophically wrong. Ralnix recovered fully, which was great. What was less great was that Ralnix told everyone he encountered about the human who had saved his life by treating him like a malfunctioning machine. And Ralnix, it turned out, knew a lot of people. Within hours of docking, the requests started coming in, not just from the Resolute Dawn's crew, but from other ships, other stations, other species Nico had never even heard of. "Absolutely not," Commander Antonia said when the first official request came through. She was on her third cup of coffee, which was never a good sign. "Nico is a maintenance technician assigned to this vessel. He is not available for loan to the Crimson Tide. The Crimson Tide's chief medical officer specifically requested him," the station liaison replied through the comm. "They have 18 wounded from a recent skirmish and heard that the human has unconventional but effective healing methods. The human has a name, and that name is Nico. And he's not a healer, he's a technician who's been accidentally practicing medicine because our translation matrices are terrible. Nevertheless, the request stands. Will you grant it?" Antonia looked at Nico, who was trying to make himself as small as possible in the corner of her office. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think I want to go back to fixing coffee makers," Nico said quietly. "That's not an option anymore, apparently." Antonia sighed. "You know what the real problem is? You're actually good at this. Imogen showed me the analysis of your treatment methods. Your success rate is higher than standard medical protocols for certain injury types." "That's because I don't see injuries," Nico said. "I see system failures. It's not the same thing." "But what if it is?" A new voice entered the conversation. Dr. Imogen stepped into the office, looking like she hadn't slept in 2 days, which, knowing her schedule, she probably hadn't. "I've been thinking about this," she continued, "about why Nico's approach works, and I think I figured it out." "Please enlighten us," Antonia said dryly. "Traditional medicine treats injury as damage to repair. We see a wound, we heal it. We see disease, we cure it. It's reactive, focused on restoration." Imogen leaned against the desk. "But Nico doesn't see damage, he sees malfunction, and that changes everything." Nico frowned. "I don't follow." "When I treated Ralnix, I saw a punctured lung and tried to heal it. When you treated him, you saw a pressure containment failure and fixed it. Same problem, different framework. And for species like the Ralmoth, whose entire culture is built around warrior codes and honor, there's a huge psychological difference." "Between what?" Antonia asked. "Between being damaged and being broken," Imogen said. "Damage implies weakness, vulnerability, something shameful that needs to be hidden. But something broken can be fixed. It's mechanical, impersonal, nothing to be ashamed of. When Nico treats warriors like they're malfunctioning machines, he removes the stigma from their injuries." The office fell silent. "That's—" Antonia started, then stopped. "Actually, that's profound. It's also exploitable," Imogen added. "If word gets out that there's a human who can treat injuries without the psychological burden that normally comes with medical care? Every warrior culture in the coalition is going to want access to him. They already do, Antonia said, gesturing at the stack of requests on her terminal. We've received 63 inquiries in the past 6 hours. Nico felt faint. 63? And counting. Antonia turned to him. I can deny them. I can tell them you're not available, that you're essential to ship operations. But Nico, I need you to understand something. This could be bigger than just you fixing people. This could change how the entire coalition approaches medical care. I just want to fix machines, Nico said weakly. I know, but sometimes the universe has other plans. The compromise they reached was this. Nico would accept limited consultations while docked at Anchor 9. He'd work with actual medical professionals, providing his perspective while they handled the technical medical aspects. A trial run, to see if this approach actually worked on a larger scale. Nico agreed because refusing felt selfish, and because deep down, some part of him was curious about whether this crazy idea could actually work. That's how he found himself in a station medical facility 2 days later, surrounded by injured coalition soldiers and feeling incredibly out of his depth. The first case was a Narquil fighter pilot with severe wing damage. Traditional treatment would involve surgery, grafts, months of recovery. The pilot stood before Nico, wings trembling, mandibles clicking with anxiety. They say I may never fly again, the pilot said. The damage is too severe. Nico studied the wings. They were torn, yes, but the underlying structure was intact. The problem wasn't the damage itself, it was how the damage was affecting the wing's aerodynamics. Your wings aren't ruined, Nico said. They're just inefficient. Look, the tears are causing drag and disrupting airflow. If we reinforce the damaged sections with a flexible polymer matrix and reshape the edges to restore laminar flow, you'll fly again. Maybe not at peak performance initially, but we can recalibrate as you heal. The station doctor, a gruff Lornak named Mortok, made a rumbling sound of surprise. You're talking about treating wings like damaged ship plating. Because aerodynamics is aerodynamics, whether it's biological or mechanical. The principles don't change. They performed the procedure. Well, Mortok performed it while Nico provided guidance. And 3 hours later, the pilot was testing the repaired wings in a low-gravity chamber. It works, the pilot breathed, wings catching air currents properly. It actually works. Word spread. Again. Faster this time. By the end of the day, Nico had consulted on 12 cases. By the end of the week, he'd worked with medical staff from 18 different species. And somewhere in that chaotic blur of broken bones and torn tissues and damaged organs, something shifted. He started teaching. Not formally, not officially, but organically. A doctor would ask why he approached a problem a certain way, and Nico would explain the engineering logic. Another would question his reasoning, and he'd walk them through the system's analysis. Before long, medical staff were attending his consultations just to learn his methodology. You're treating trauma like corrupted software, one physician observed. Because that's basically what it is, Nico replied. Physical trauma disrupts normal biological processes. If you debug the system, identify where the processes broke down, you can restore function faster than just treating symptoms. The breakthrough came with Admiral Mortok. The Lornak admiral was a legend in the coalition fleet, a massive rhinoceros-like being who'd commanded ships in 100 battles. He was also, Nico discovered, suffering from what humans would call PTSD. The Lornak didn't have a word for it. They called it battle fatigue. and treated it as a character flaw. Mortok came to Nico not for physical injuries, but because he'd heard the human had fixed several warriors who'd been struggling with similar issues. "I cannot lead my fleet," Mortok said, his voice heavy with shame. "I freeze during combat decisions. My hands shake when alarms sound. I am broken, and I do not know how to repair myself." Nico felt that familiar panic rising. This was way beyond his expertise. But then his engineer's brain kicked in. "You're not broken," he said slowly. "Your threat assessment system is malfunctioning. Your brain experienced severe stress during combat, and now it's overcompensating. It's like a sensor array that got damaged and started seeing threats everywhere, even when there aren't any." Mortok's massive head tilted. "You speak of my mind as if it were machinery." "Because, in a way, it is. Your brain processes information, makes decisions based on data inputs, stores memories like a computer. When trauma occurs, it's like getting hit with a massive power surge. Some circuits get damaged, some start misfiring. But just like any damaged system, you can troubleshoot it. You can identify which processes are malfunctioning and work to recalibrate them." "How?" "Well, first we need to identify your triggers. What specifically makes you freeze? Once we know which inputs are causing the malfunction, we can work on desensitizing your system to them. It's like gradually increasing voltage tolerance in a damaged circuit. Slow, controlled exposure until the system can handle normal operations again." Mortok was silent for a long moment. "This makes sense to me," he said finally. "I am not weak. I am not failing. I am simply malfunctioning and require recalibration." "Exactly. Can you fix me?" Nico glanced at the station psychologist who'd been observing the consultation. The psychologist, a human named Imogen had recommended, nodded slightly. "I can't fix you," Nico said carefully, "but I can teach you how to fix yourself. And I can monitor your progress while you do the repairs." They worked together over the following weeks. Nico treated Mortok's PTSD like he would a corrupted navigation system. Identify the faulty subroutines, isolate the triggers, implement gradual recalibration protocols. The psychologist provided the actual therapeutic techniques, but Nico translated them into language that resonated with a warrior who'd spent his life thinking in terms of ship systems and battle readiness. It worked. Slowly, steadily, Mortok improved, and he told his fleet. Every ship, every warrior suffering in silence because they thought psychological wounds were shameful. The requests went from dozens to hundreds. "We need to formalize this," Imogen said during one of their increasingly frequent planning sessions. "What you're doing, this intersection of engineering and medicine, it needs a name, a structure, training protocols." "Mechanical medicine," Antonia suggested, "or systems biology." "How about we call it, 'Please let me go back to fixing door panels,'" Nico muttered. They ignored him. The Coalition Medical Council created a new division, Systems Integration Medicine. The pilot program launched with Nico as lead consultant and a team of engineers and physicians working together. It shouldn't have worked. It was absurd, really, treating living beings like broken machines. But it did work, particularly for species and individuals who struggled with traditional medical frameworks. Then Ithalani arrived, and everything changed again. The Ornathi Elder was ancient, her feathers dulled with age, her movements slow and deliberate. She was dying. Everyone knew it, including her. But she'd traveled 3 weeks to reach Anchor 9 specifically to see Nico. "I have heard," she said in her whispering voice, "that you fix what others cannot, that you see beyond damage to the underlying malfunction." "I try," Nico said cautiously. "Then fix me." Nico felt his heart sink. What's wrong? I am old. My organs are failing. My body is shutting down. It is natural, inevitable. But I wish to see my grandchildren one more time before I die. I need 6 more months. Can you give me that? Nico ran scans, consulted with doctors, analyzed her biological systems with the same thoroughness he'd analyze a failing ship, and came to a conclusion he didn't want to face. I can't, he said finally. I'm sorry, but some systems fail permanently. When the fundamental components are worn out, when there's no redundancy left to exploit, when the degradation has reached a critical threshold, there's no fix. There's just accepting that the system has reached end of life. Ithalani studied him with knowing eyes. You have never said this before. I've never needed to. Because until now, everything you encountered could be repaired. Yes, but I cannot. No, I'm sorry. Ithalani made a sound that might have been laughter. Do not apologize. You have given me something valuable. I've given you nothing. You have given me truth. And in doing so, you have taught yourself something important. She reached out, her fragile hand touching his. Not everything broken can be fixed, young human. Some endings are simply endings. And that is not failure. It is reality. Ithalani died 3 weeks later, surrounded by her family. She never got her 6 months, but she got enough time for goodbyes, and according to her children, that was enough. Nico took it hard. You did everything you could, Imogen told him over coffee in the station lounge. Some things genuinely cannot be fixed. I know, Nico said, staring into his cup. Intellectually, I know that. But I've spent the last 2 months convincing people that everything is fixable if you just approach it correctly. And now you understand the limits, Imogen finished. Which makes you a better healer, ironically. The dangerous ones are the people who think they can fix everything, who refuse to acknowledge when they're out of options. Accepting limits, that's wisdom. Doesn't feel wise. Feels like failure. Yeah, well, welcome to medicine. That feeling never completely goes away. They sat in silence for a while, watching the traffic flow through the station's main concourse. Ships coming and going, people living their lives, the endless motion of the universe continuing despite individual tragedies. The council approved your program, Imogen said eventually. Full funding, official recognition. They want to establish systems integration medicine as a standard training option across the coalition. You'll need to develop curriculum, train instructors, create certification standards. That sounds like a lot of work. It is, but it's also important work. What you've started here, it's changing how people think about injury, about healing, about the relationship between body and mind, especially for warrior cultures who've struggled with medical care for generations. Nico thought about Mortak, about the Ralmoth warriors, about all the beings who'd found comfort in having their suffering translated into mechanical terms they could understand and address. Okay, he said, but I'm not giving up maintenance work completely. I still need to fix actual machines sometimes. For my sanity. Imogen grinned. Deal. Though I should warn you, Commander Antonia is already planning to reassign you. New official position, Systems Integration Specialist, Biological Division. That's a terrible title. You can take it up with her. Good luck with that. The formal program launch happened 2 months later, back aboard the Resolute Dawn. They'd converted an entire section into a training facility where engineers and medical staff could learn collaborative treatment approaches. Nico stood in the new facility, reviewing the curriculum one more time, when small feet padded up behind him. Nico? He turned to find Pip, noticeably bigger than the last time they'd really talked, growing fast, the way Ralmoth cubs did. "Hey, Pip, what's up?" "I have something broken." Pip held out a small bundle. "Can you fix it?" Nico's heart sank. Not again. "Pip, I thought we talked about this. I can't fix every—" Then he saw what Pip was holding, and his words died. It wasn't a toy. It was a small child, another species Nico didn't immediately recognize, though the tattered refugee clothing told its own story. The child couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 in human years, unconscious, breathing shallowly. "Found him in the lower docking bay," Pip said, his young voice tight with worry. "He was hiding in a cargo container. He is hurt, but he ran from the medical staff. He is scared. But I told him about you. I told him you fix broken things, and you are not scary like the white medical rooms." Nico carefully took the child, his scanner already out. Malnutrition, dehydration, and, there, a poorly healed leg injury that had set wrong. Old damage, weeks or months old. The kind of injury that would cause pain with every step for the rest of the child's life, if not corrected. "Okay," Nico said softly. "Okay, we can help him." He carried the child to the new facility, Pip trailing behind. The medical staff Nico had been training were already there. A mix of species, a mix of specialties, all of them learning to see biology through an engineer's eyes. "We've got a refugee child," Nico announced. "Malnutrition, dehydration, and an improperly healed leg fracture. Who wants to walk me through the treatment approach?" A young Narquil physician stepped forward. "The leg is the priority. The bone set incorrectly, creating a structural instability in the limb. We need to re-break and reset it, essentially repairing the foundation before we can address the rest of the system." "Good. What else?" "Malnutrition means compromised immune function," a Moltari added. "We need to gradually restore nutritional input while monitoring for system overload. Like restarting a power core, too much too fast will cause damage." "Excellent. Let's get to work." They did. The child woke up halfway through, terrified. But Pip was there, speaking in a language Nico didn't understand, but which seemed to calm the young refugee. And Nico kept his voice steady, explaining everything in simple terms. "Your leg is broken, but we're going to fix it. It'll hurt for a little while, but then it'll work properly again. Like when a machine gets damaged and needs repair. Nothing scary, just maintenance." The child, his name was Nix, they learned, listened with wide eyes. "You fix broken things?" Nix whispered. "That's what I do," Nico confirmed. "Can you teach me?" Nico blinked. "Teach you what?" "To fix broken things, so when I am broken again, I can fix myself." Something warm settled in Nico's chest. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I can teach you that." They repaired Nix's leg, using the same principles Nico had developed over the past months. They set up a nutritional recovery plan. They found him placement with a refugee support program on the station. But before Nix left, Nico spent an afternoon teaching him basic self-care, translated into maintenance terminology that a child could understand. "Your body is like a small ship," Nico explained. "It needs fuel, that's food and water. It needs maintenance, that's sleep and hygiene. And when something breaks, you need to assess the damage and apply appropriate repairs. Can you do that?" Nix nodded seriously. "I can do that." "Good. Because the best skill anyone can learn isn't how to fix everything. It's how to fix yourself." 6 months later, the Systems Integration Medicine program was running at full capacity. Nico split his time between teaching, consulting, and, yes, still fixing the occasional coffee maker when Commander Antonia's supply ran low. The Resolute Dawn had become a hub for medical innovation, where traditional physicians worked alongside engineers to develop new treatment approaches, where warriors could seek care without shame, understanding their wounds as mechanical failures rather than personal weaknesses, where trauma wasn't a stigma, but a system malfunction that could be addressed and recalibrated. Nico still wasn't sure how he'd ended up here, how a simple act of fixing a child's toy had cascaded into this strange, improbable career. But he'd learned to accept it. Not everything made sense. Not everything could be predicted or controlled or fixed. Sometimes the universe just pointed you in a direction and said, "Go there," and your only choice was whether to fight it or embrace it. He was in his workshop because he'd insisted on keeping a workshop, even if he rarely had time to use it, when Pip appeared one final time. Older now, almost adolescent, training for his own position in the Coalition fleet. "I wanted to thank you," Pip said formally, "for fixing my toy all those months ago, and for everything that came after." Nico smiled. "You know what? I should thank you. You started all this by asking a simple question. You believed something could be fixed when everyone else said it couldn't. That's a good quality to have." "Will you teach me," Pip asked suddenly, "your methods? I want to learn to see things the way you do. You want to be a systems integration specialist? I want to help people the way you helped my father, the way you helped Nix, the way you helped all of us." Pip's bioluminescent stripes pulsed softly. "I want to fix broken things." Nico felt that familiar warmth again, the sense that despite everything, despite the chaos and confusion, and that one heartbreaking failure with Ithalani, he'd done something right. "Okay," he said. "But first lesson. You don't fix broken things. You teach them to fix themselves. Can you remember that?" Pip grinned, showing all his very sharp teeth. "I can remember that." And in that moment, in a workshop aboard a Coalition medical frigate somewhere in the vast darkness of space, Nico understood something important. He hadn't changed the universe by fixing things. He'd changed it by teaching others that they could.